On December 31st, 1999, the world spent $500 billion to fix two numbers. We thought we'd patched the bug. We were wrong. At 11:59 p.m., Berlin was partying. People wore plastic glasses shaped like the year 2000. But inside a major European bank, 20 engineers stared at a black screen. The clock hit midnight. The computer didn't see the year 2000. It saw the year 1900. First, a single database crashed. Then, a payment server went dark. It wasn't a massive explosion. It was a quiet, digital rot. Within 12 seconds, every ATM in the city stopped working. Railway schedules wiped themselves clean. Emergency generators at 3 hospitals failed because their internal clocks thought they hadn't been serviced in 100 years. The engineers had backup paper manuals, but you can't run a modern city on paper. By 12:15 a.m., the local power grid shut down to protect itself from fake data. The fireworks were still going off in the dark. People on the streets thought it was a cool light show. They didn't know their bank accounts were already gone. Every transaction made after midnight was flagged as 90 years overdue. Interest rates spiked by 9,000% in seconds. By sunrise, the phones stopped working. Food deliveries stopped. The trucks couldn't get fuel because the digital pumps locked up. We built our entire civilization on a shortcut. And when the shortcut broke, we realized how fragile we actually were. Your phone has more power today than every computer in 1999 combined. But if the grid goes down tomorrow, those paper manuals won't save us either. 3 minutes into the year 2000, the money stopped moving. While millions danced under fireworks, Europe's banking servers quietly died. It started in Berlin. Inside a massive financial center, engineers watched their screens go red. One payment server froze. Then 5 more. Then 50. The computers thought it was 1900, but the wrong date wasn't the real nightmare. The real nightmare was what that wrong date triggered. Calculations failed instantly. Security systems locked up. The network tried to protect itself by shutting down. It was a chain reaction. One machine told another that the data was corrupted. The second machine believed it. Then it shut down too to prevent damage. Within minutes, systems across the continent went completely silent. By 12:11 a.m., ATMs across Europe went dark. People leaving New Year parties wanted cash. They got a gray screen. Most people laughed. They joked about the Y2K bug. Then they walked to the next machine. That one was dead too, and the one after that. In Munich, a man tried 3 different cards. At Frankfurt Airport, the screens went wild. Flights scheduled for Saturday showed departures from 100 years ago. Planes didn't fall from the sky, but the booking systems completely melted. Ground crews couldn't track baggage. Managers had to slow everything down. Delays piled up. Passengers sat on the tarmac for hours. No one could tell them why. The pilots had no flight plans. The gates had no records. The modern aviation grid was running on guesswork. In London, the phone network started choking. Engineers pulled the plug on those servers. But phone lines were already overloaded. Millions of people were trying to call their family at the exact same moment. Calls dropped. Lines went dead. In Paris, a hospital screen flashed. Invalid date. Doctors couldn't read patient files. They had to dig out old paper records. No dramatic blackouts, just everything getting slower and much more dangerous. By 12:43 a.m., the White House got the news. America still had a few hours before midnight. The emergency team sat in total silence. Europe is experiencing significant failures, an advisor said. How bad? We don't know yet. America had spent billions preparing, but so had Europe. Suddenly, those last hours felt incredibly short. Engineers were called back to work. Hospitals double-checked generators. America braced for impact. Back in Berlin, things got worse. A major database desynced. Millions of files had conflicting times. The systems started arguing with each other. One machine said it was 2000. The digital world had lost a common understanding of time. Across Europe, banks began temporarily freezing certain automated transactions. Not because the money was gone, but because they could no longer guarantee the accuracy of every record. International transfers slowed. Credit card authorization became unreliable. Some stores could still accept cards, others could not. Cash suddenly became extremely valuable. People noticed. The first queues appeared outside working ATMs. The year 2000 started with a broken ATM. At 7:12 a.m., a cashier in Berlin swiped a card. The screen flashed a simple message: transaction declined. The customer had plenty of money, but the machine did not care. By 8 a.m., thousands of people across Europe faced the same problem. Some cash machines worked, most did not. The ones that worked ran out of banknotes in minutes. This was not the massive explosion people expected from Y2K. It was much worse. It was quiet. By 9:30 a.m., a supermarket outside Paris ran out of bread. People were not hungry, they were terrified. They bought 30 bottles of water at a time. They cleared shelves of canned meat, batteries, and toilet paper. The store manager tried to tell them more food was on the way. He asked his assistant if deliveries were actually coming. The assistant shook his head. He said they could not reach anyone. Once that rumor spread, the store was empty in 20 minutes. Fear moves much faster than delivery trucks. By 10:14 a.m., the train stations were a mess. Ticket machines froze. Electronic departure boards showed wrong times or went completely black. Staff had to use old paper schedules from the 90s. One worker stood on a chair and shouted at the crowd. He told them to go home. Someone yelled back, asking when the system would be fixed. The worker said he did not know. That honest answer made the room go completely silent. Airports were even worse. The planes could fly. The pilots were ready. But the databases for baggage and tickets were broken. Airlines had to cancel hundreds of flights, not because of bad weather, because they could not trust their own data. Thousands of people ended up sleeping on their suitcases. In hospitals, the situation got dangerous. Patient files disappeared from screens. Databases showed wrong expiration dates for critical medicine. Insurance systems rejected sick people, so the doctors did something desperate. They threw away their keyboards. They brought out paper clipboards and blue pens. A nurse dropped a stack of paper on a desk. She looked at the young doctors and said, "Welcome to 1985. Nobody laughed. By noon, the panic hit gas stations. Cars lined up for blocks. The digital pumps failed, so they only took cash. But cash was gone. Drivers started fighting over the last pump. There was no actual gas shortage, but the fear of running out created one anyway. At bank headquarters, the situation was terrifying. Engineers spent hours trying to fix the main database. When they finally got it running, they found a massive error. The account balances did not match the backups. The difference was only 1%, but across millions of accounts, billions were missing. They could not release the money. For millions of customers, that meant their money still existed. They simply could not access all of it. Night returned to Europe. Families gathered around televisions. Radios remained switched on. Candles sat ready on tables, even though electricity still worked. On January 2nd, 2000, the world did not end, but the internet almost broke itself on purpose. 30 hours after midnight, thousands of engineers were living under their desks. Coffee machines ran constantly. Sleeping bags lined office floors. The greatest tech repair job in history was happening. The goal was simple: find the broken code, fix it, and move on. But nobody knew how many bugs existed. For decades, we built new software on top of old software. Banks talked to payment networks. Retailers talked to warehouses. Everything was linked. Deep inside this massive web, thousands of computer clocks suddenly thought it was 1900. In Frankfurt, engineers at a major bank made a scary discovery. Their main database was fine, but external systems were sending corrupted dates. If they stayed connected, their clean data would get ruined. The supervisor looked at a map of hundreds of connections. He made a hard choice: disconnect everything. Within minutes, the bank cut itself off. Other banks did the same. The global financial system was literally tearing itself apart to survive. By 7 a.m., central banks from London to Tokyo were on emergency calls. They prepared to stop electronic trading if things got worse. In New York, Wall Street was quiet because it was Sunday. But technicians were running endless tests: buy, sell, transfer, clear. Then, a key system spat out a date: January 2nd, 1900. The room went dead silent. They reset it and tried again. Same result. They had less than 24 hours before the market opened. People withdrew cash like crazy. One store manager watched customers clear out the bottled water. He said, "The water still works." His employee replied that they are not buying it because it stopped. They are buying it because they think it might. Fear was moving faster than the actual glitch. In Berlin, police had to guard food warehouses. The digital scheduling systems were broken, so they went old school. Drivers got paper maps. They used carbon copy forms and clipboards. Human beings replaced the software. One supervisor laughed and said this was the system 20 years ago. It never stopped working. Meanwhile, phones were ringing in retirement homes. Companies needed the programmers who wrote the original code in the 1980s. One 62-year-old programmer got a call about a logistics system he wrote in 1983. He went to an office, sat with 20-year-old engineers, and looked at his old code. Across the world, scenes like this repeated. Old programmers returned. Retired engineers opened forgotten manuals. The people who had built the digital world were being asked to save it. Monday morning arrived. At 8 a.m. in Frankfurt, the markets opened. Investors panicked. Sell orders flooded in. Technology stocks fell. Banks fell. Airlines fell. Insurance companies fell. Markets across Europe dropped sharply. London followed. Then, New York prepared to open. Television networks displayed red numbers across screens. At 9:30, New York opened. Stock prices plummeted. Automatic trading systems shut down. Traders had to write orders on physical paper. The trading floor looked like 1980 again. But the system did not collapse. Governments stepped in. Engineers kept patching the code. By late afternoon, things finally stabilized. Payment networks came back online. Trains started running on time. Banks slowly reconnected. For the first time all weekend, engineers were fixing bugs faster than new ones appeared. We survived, but we learned a scary lesson. One tired engineer walked outside. His friend said, "We fixed it." The engineer shook his head. "No," he said, "we stopped it. Now we have to make sure it can never happen again." And that decision would change the next 26 years of technological history. In January 2000, the world did not end. The lights stayed on. The water kept running. But behind closed doors, a massive panic changed how we live. For years, engineers warned that computers would crash at midnight. They didn't, but the scare revealed a terrifying truth. Our digital world was incredibly fragile. So, governments and businesses made a wild decision. They chose to go backward. Take hospitals, for example. Doctors loved their new computers. But after Y2K, administrators forced them to keep paper files. Every single patient record needed a physical copy. The doctors hated it. Storage rooms filled with heavy folders. But no one forgot those tense nights. If the screens went black, the paper still worked. Banks did the exact same thing. Before the year 2000, banks wanted total automation. It was cheap and fast. After the scare, they obsessed over one word: redundancy. They built backup systems that were completely offline. They kept extra cash in local vaults. They printed manual transaction ledgers. One executive complained that this would cost billions of dollars. A regulator looked at him and said, "Y2K already did." The argument ended right there. Airports changed next. They kept their digital schedules, but they brought back paper flight plans. They set up independent radio networks. If the main system crashed, regional controllers could still run things. Trains would move slower, sure, but they would still move. The new rule was simple. Systems could slow down, but they must never stop completely. But the biggest shock happened in supermarkets and warehouses. For a decade, shipping companies focused on speed. They kept almost zero extra inventory. Computers predicted exactly when a truck should arrive. Then, Y2K hit. Suddenly, companies lost track of their own trucks. The system was too tight. So, they created a bizarre event called Offline Day. Once a year, massive distribution centers pulled the plug. They shut down their main computers. Workers had to use clipboards. They used radios. They wrote inventory down with pens. At first, the workers hated it. Then, it became a game. It kept them ready. This created a weird new job market. Companies stopped firing older workers. They realized they needed people who knew how to work without software. Young tech grads could code, but they didn't know how to run a business with a pen. One older worker laughed as he handed a paper ledger to a 22-year-old. The kid asked, "What am I supposed to do with this?" The older worker said, "Today you learn how a bank actually works." Regular families changed too. People started keeping cash under the mattress. They bought battery-powered radios. They kept paper maps in their glove boxes. Stores started selling Y2K survival kits. Long after the panic ended, the kits kept selling. People realized how fast comfort can disappear. By 2003, the internet was growing faster than ever, but the engines under the hood were different. Crucial systems were cut off from the public web. Power grids operated behind physical walls. Banks split their networks into tiny, isolated pieces. A college professor in 2003 stood before his computer science class. He showed them a photo of engineers surrounded by paper maps in 2000. He asked his students, "What is the most important part of any computer system?" One student guessed the processor. Another guessed the software. The professor shook his head. The most important part is trust, he said. If people do not trust the system, the power does not matter. In 2005, a reporter interviewed an old Y2K engineer. The reporter asked, "Are we safe now?" The engineer shook his head. "No," he said. "We are just preparing for the next thing that we forgot to think about. Today, our servers are faster than ever. But inside the most secure server rooms, you will still find a glass cabinet. Inside that cabinet sits a radio, a map, and a thick binder of paper, and several thick binders. We built the future, but we kept one foot in the past. The future had returned, but humanity had decided to keep one foot in the past." The internet died in 2014, but nobody actually noticed. Trains kept running. Hospitals kept working. Cash registers still opened. It sounds impossible. In our world, a 5-minute outage ruins everything. But here, the Y2K scare of 2000 changed the rules forever. Governments learned one brutal lesson: never put your civilization on one network. By 2007, broadband was everywhere. People shopped online, they used social media, but beneath the surface, everything had a physical safety net. Then, the smartphones arrived. People loved them. A computer in your pocket was pure magic. But banks and governments drew a hard line. You could check your bank app, but you could never rely on it as your only wallet. Digital tickets became popular, but train stations kept their physical booths open. Phones were for convenience. They were never allowed to be the only option. By 2012, digital payments were taking over the world. People tapped their phones for everything, but cash never disappeared. Governments passed strict continuity laws. If you sold food, medicine, or gas, offline payments had to work. If your internet went down, your business had to keep running. Why? Because history taught them a harsh lesson. An online payment system that fails during an outage is useless. It is a liability. Social media grew into a giant. Billions of people logged on daily. But the culture was different. People did not trust the cloud. They used a simple phrase: always keep a copy. Families backed up photos on physical hard drives. Schools taught kids digital resilience instead of just typing. They learned that the cloud is just someone else's computer. Then came the big one. In 2014, a massive routing failure hit the global network. It was not a date bug. It was a massive technical glitch. Millions temporarily lost access to major online services. Social media disappeared. Online shopping stopped. Cloud applications became unreachable. For several hours, the digital world became strangely quiet. In our timeline, such an outage might have paralyzed countless services. In this world, something remarkable happened. Trains continued running. Hospitals continued treating patients. Supermarkets continued accepting payments. Airports slowed down, but remained functional. Why? Because the systems had been designed to fail separately. The internet was down. Civilization was not. An engineer inside a railway control center watched colleagues continue working. He smiled. Someone asked, "What's funny?" He pointed toward the dead internet connection. January 2000. His colleague understood immediately. The lesson had worked. After that crash, the market changed overnight. Companies started competing on one feature: offline capability. GPS apps downloaded entire continents to your local storage. Music apps let you keep thousands of songs offline forever. Smart homes had physical switches that worked without Wi-Fi. If a product needed the internet to function, nobody bought it. The best selling point became, It still works when the connection dies. Then artificial intelligence arrived. It changed medicine, research, and driving. But AI was built with the same paranoia. Hospitals ran local AI servers. Self-driving cars kept their navigation data on board, not in the cloud. If the network went down, the car still knew where to go. By 2018, the smart city debate began. Politicians wanted to connect everything to one massive AI. Traffic lights, power grids, water systems. It promised unmatched efficiency. But during a Senate hearing, one man asked a single question. What happens when the network fails? The room went silent. They realized efficiency was a trap. So they built smart cities, but kept them completely separate. Water did not talk to electricity. Emergency services had their own private lines. Efficiency was sacrificed for survival. Then came 2020. A global pandemic forced millions to stay home. Internet traffic exploded. Schools moved online. Video communication exploded. Digital services became essential. The internet experienced unprecedented demand. And for the first time, the architecture built after Y2K faced a truly global test. Networks slowed. Platforms struggled. Some cloud services failed temporarily, but essential infrastructure remained stable. Hospitals maintained independent systems. Government networks continued operating. Supply chains used offline backup procedures when necessary. Banks remained accessible through multiple channels. The pandemic was still devastating. Technology could not prevent human suffering. But the digital infrastructure did not become another crisis. On January 1st, 2000, the lights went out. It was the night the digital world died. We call it the Great Y2K Crash. For teenagers today, it is just a history lesson. A boring story their parents tell. But that single night changed how we build everything. Fast forward 26 years. The year is now 2026. On the surface, this world looks exactly like ours. Everyone carries a smartphone. Electric cars fill the streets of Berlin. Artificial intelligence runs our offices. But underneath the shiny tech, there is a massive difference. Everything important has a backup plan. Let us look at a normal morning. It is 7:14 a.m. A woman walks into a small coffee shop in Berlin. She orders a hot espresso. She taps her phone to pay. The card reader screen says, "Network unavailable." The cashier does not panic. He does not call support. He just presses one physical button on the side. The screen shifts to offline mode. The payment goes through instantly. She grabs her coffee and walks out. Across the city, a major bank loses connection. Online banking apps stop loading. But the physical branches stay open. The ATMs switch to secure local limits. You can still get cash. The local machines save the transaction data. They sync up later when the line is back. Every bank keeps its own private generator. Economists complained about the cost for 20 years. But the bankers always gave the same answer. They just pointed to the year 2000. Down the street, a massive hospital loses its connection. In our world, doctors would scramble for paper. Nurses would lose track of patient files. Here, local servers take over in 3 seconds. The medical AI keeps analyzing brain scans. The surgery robots do not stop moving. The patient records stay on local screens. A doctor barely even notices the glitch. 26 years ago, a bad database crushed hospitals. Now, technology knows how to stand alone. At the train station, thousands stand on the platforms. They look up at the giant digital schedules. Then, a regional communication cable snaps. The big screens freeze. For 10 seconds, the crowd looks up. But the trains do not crash. Station computers print physical schedules. Staff hand them out to passengers. An announcer says services will continue under local control. Several trains are delayed. None disappear. The railway was designed around one principle. A central failure cannot mean total failure. Even the smart homes are different. Lights respond to your voice. Thermostats learn your routine. But every smart device has a physical switch. A light still has a wall button. A lock still takes a key. Cars still have mechanical keyholes. Tech companies learned a painful lesson. If a device is useless without the internet, it is not smart. It is just lazy. At exactly 12:41, a major European internet backbone fails. Millions lose connectivity. Social media disappears. Streaming stops. Websites fail to load. Across Europe, people stare at their phones. One teenager complains, "No internet?" His friend looks horrified. "What are we supposed to do?" They laugh. But outside, something remarkable happens. Almost nothing. In 1999, the world spent $300 billion to fix a simple two-digit computer code. For most people alive today, Y2K is just a retro meme. It is old computers, chunky monitors, and weird television news broadcasts. The Millennium Bug became a giant joke because nothing actually broke when the clock struck midnight. Planes kept flying, banks stayed open, the power stayed on. But imagine a different timeline, a world where those warnings were completely right. Picture this: midnight arrived and thousands of hidden systems failed. It did not happen like a Hollywood movie. There were no giant explosions, no dramatic music. Instead, the lights flickered, and then everything just went quiet. Millions of lines of old code, written by programmers who were long retired, stopped working. For 72 hours, the modern world realized how fragile its daily life really was. Our entire civilization ran on invisible machines. Databases, banking networks, and shipping schedules all vanished in a second. Food shipments stopped at the borders. Water pumps shut down. Hospital monitors went dark. But humanity did not collapse. We did not turn on each other. Instead, we adapted. Doctors pulled out dusty paper files. Train conductors used printed schedules. Truck drivers found paper maps in their glove boxes. Warehouse workers tracked inventory with clipboards and pencils. Retired programmers sat at old keyboards, typing fixes in ancient computer languages. Humans became the backup system. We saved ourselves because we had to. We realized that machines are great, but human beings are the ultimate safety net. When the crisis ended, the world made a massive decision. We did not stop using technology. We built more of it. We created the internet, smartphones, and artificial intelligence. We built smart cities and self-driving cars. But we built them differently this time. We built them with a safety net. Underneath every digital system, we left a physical switch. We kept a paper backup. We built secondary power grids that run on diesel. We made sure that if the digital world died, the physical world would keep spinning. Fast forward to December 31st, 2026. Inside a quiet Berlin museum, an old man and his grandson stand before a glass display. Inside sits a beige computer from 1999. It has a giant floppy disk drive and a heavy keyboard. The boy points at it and asks if that little machine caused the great crash. The grandfather smiles and says no. The boy asks what did. The old man tells him we trusted too many things to work forever. The boy asks if we stopped trusting them. The grandfather shakes his head. He says we just learned to trust them without depending on them completely. Outside the museum, the streets of Berlin are packed. Thousands of people gather near the Brandenburg Gate. They are laughing, drinking, and waiting for the countdown. 10, 9, 8. Inside city hospitals, computers run life support, but manual backup generators are already warm and running. 7, 6, 5. Inside banks, billions of dollars move across digital networks, but physical ledgers remain locked in vaults nearby, updated every hour. 4, 3, 2, 1. Midnight hits. Fireworks explode over the city skyline. Red, gold, and blue light up the dark sky. The computers do not crash. The trains keep moving. The lights stay on. Nobody panics. An old engineer stands in the crowd with his granddaughter. She asks if he is nervous. He looks at his watch, laughs, and says, "Not anymore." Nothing happened. And that was the greatest victory of all. The best technology is not the kind that never breaks. It is the kind that fails without taking the rest of the world down with it. If we had experienced a real warning back then, would we be safer today? Would you trade some convenience for a little more safety? What would you do if every screen in your house went black tonight? Would you know how to find food, water, or your family without a map app? We might never have to answer those questions. History teaches us one major lesson. You never find your weakest points when things are running smoothly. You only find them when everything stops. So, keep questioning the systems around you. Do not assume something will work tomorrow just because it worked today. Thanks for opening this file. See you next time. Until our next journey. Good night. The hidden archive closes.